The Collector of Stillwater Road. The first disappearance happened on a warm September evening, just as the last traces of summer were fading. Stillwater Road looked calm as always, an old two-lane stretch cutting through pine woods, dust drifting off the shoulders like smoke. But that night, people swore later, the forest felt awake, as if watching.
Emily Caro, a 22-year-old college student, vanished on her way to a night shift at the Stillwater Diner. Her car was found empty, headlights still on, driver's door open. No signs of a struggle, no footprints, just silence. Sheriff Nolan Briggs stood over the vehicle, listening to the hum of crickets that seemed too loud, too synchronized. "She didn't get out of this car willingly," he muttered. But there was nothing to chase, no leads, no shadow to blame. Then came the second disappearance, and the third. Whoever was taking them followed the ritual, always on Stillwater Road, always just after sunset, always leaving the engine running. Locals whispered about an old ghost story, the Stillwater Shadow, a figure known to lure travelers off the road. But Briggs didn't believe in myths. He believed in monsters made of flesh and bone. The town began locking doors, canceling plans, avoiding the dusk. Yet, the abductions continued.
Everything changed when a survivor appeared. Her name was Jenna Pike. She stumbled out of the woods 3 days after her disappearance, covered in mud, barefoot, shaking so hard she couldn't speak. When she finally whispered her story, the entire room went silent. "He takes pieces, not to hurt you, to keep you, to make you perfect." Nobody understood at first, but she insisted. "He calls himself the Collector." According to Jenna, he dragged her into an underground room, cement walls, old lamps buzzing with dying light, shelves lined with labeled jars. Each jar contained something human: hair, nails, teeth, bits of bone. His collection. "He talks to them," she said, her voice trembling. "He thinks they're still alive." She escaped only because he fell asleep in a rocking chair, humming a tune she didn't recognize. Briggs formed a small search team. They entered the forest where Jenna had emerged, pushing through thick pines and hanging moss. Hours passed without sign of life. Then, at dusk, they found a trap door covered in leaves. The moment they pried it open, a wave of cold, damp air rose up, as if the earth were exhaling. Steps descended into darkness. "Fleshlights on," Briggs said, but his own hand shook. The basement was worse than Jenna described, much worse. Dozens of shelves, hundreds of jars, names written in a looping, elegant hand, lamps flickering like dying stars. And in the center, a wooden chair. The seat was still warm. The Collector had been there minutes ago. A faint creak echoed above them. Footsteps. Briggs motioned for silence. They heard the trapdoor slam shut. Locks slid into place. The air tightened. Then a voice drifted down through the slats. Calm, almost cheerful. "You shouldn't be here. This room is for my family." Briggs raised his gun. "Step back from the door!" The Collector laughed softly. "I don't kill. Killing ruins the pieces. I just take what's necessary." The lamps began one by one to flicker out. Darkness crawled over the room. A single whisper floated down. "I'll add all of you one piece at a time. The final lamp died. Gunshots echoed. Something moved in the black, fast, impossibly fast. Men screamed. The sound was sharp, quick, wet. Briggs fired wildly, but something grabbed his leg, cold fingers, too strong to be human, and pulled him across the floor. As he was dragged, his hand brushed against a jar on the ground. It had his name on it. And inside, floating in pale fluid, was his right eye. He didn't even feel the pain until he started screaming. Stillwater Road was paved over. The forest thinned. People tried to forget. But disappearances continued, quiet, infrequent, always near the woods. Those who drive past the old stretch say they sometimes hear tapping on their windows even when they're alone. Others claim to see someone in the trees, smiling politely, as if studying them, collecting them, waiting for the perfect moment to take a new piece. A year after Sheriff Briggs vanished beneath the forest floor, Stillwater tried to return to normal. The town repainted its storefronts. The diner got new booths. Kids biked without looking over their shoulders, pretending not to notice the missing person flyers still taped to street poles, edges curling like dried petals. But quiet towns remember things, even when people try not to. And the woods remember everything. When the fourth hiker vanished on the new Stillwater Trail, the state finally sent someone. Her name was Agent Mara Dwyer, an investigator specializing in unusual disappearances, the kind locals whispered about, but never wrote down. Stoic, sharp-eyed, she didn't scare easily. On her first night in town, the sheriff handed her a sealed evidence bag. Inside was a phone, cracked but still functional, recovered off the latest victim. "There's a video," the sheriff said, eyes darting. "You probably shouldn't watch it alone." Mara watched it anyway. The recording was only 9 minutes long. The victim, a young man named Travis, was hiking at dusk. His breathing was steady. Birds chirped, leaves rustled. Then the sound changed, became rhythmic. Tap, 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 tap. Not footsteps, knocking. Travis turned the camera toward the trees. A figure stood between the trunks, tall, thin, dressed in dark, old-fashioned clothing. The camera shook violently as Travis stumbled backward. The figure raised a hand and gently tapped on the air, as if knocking on an invisible door. Tap, tap, tap. Then he whispered, barely audible, "Let me see what you'll become." The camera blurred. There was movement, too fast, too smooth. A hand dragged Travis into the darkness. The screen went black. But the audio kept going. Breathing. Dragging sounds. A soft humming lullaby. And finally, the collector's voice, whispering like a prayer. "You'll fit nicely upstairs." Mara wasn't the first investigator to see the collector's basement, but she was the first to go back willingly. The trap door was still there, though half covered with dirt and pine needles. She pried it open and descended the stairs. The air was thick with dampness and the faint scent of formaldehyde. The shelves still held jars, rows and rows of them, but something had changed. There was a new shelf, a tall one, almost reaching the low, crumbling ceiling. The names on the jars were new, too. Travis Bellman, left hand. Lydia Price, collarbone. Unknown, tongue. Unknown,
eyelids. Mara's stomach tightened. A small, hand-carved sign rested beside the shelf. The second level. The implication hit her like thunder. He had more than one room.
As Mara examined the cellar, a faint sound drifted through a narrow metal vent embedded in the far wall. A voice, soft, broken, repeating a phrase over and over like a malfunctioning recording. He's coming back. He's coming back. He's coming back. Mara pushed her ear to the metal. Who's in there? Can you hear me? The voice stopped instantly. Then a different voice answered. Calm, warm, familiar, even though she'd never heard it. You shouldn't be here, Agent Dwyer. Her blood turned to ice. You're early, he continued. But that's all right. I'm almost ready for you. Something scraped on the other side of the vent, metal against stone. The vent cover began to turn, screw by screw, as if someone was unscrewing it from inside. Mara stepped back, gun raised. The last screw clinked onto the floor. A pale fingertip slid through the gap and tapped gently on the metal. Tap, tap. Tap. Her flashlight flickered violently, then died. When she switched it back on, the vent was closed again, completely sealed, screws back in place. But something new had appeared on the wall. A fresh handprint. Small, blood red, still wet.
Over the next week, Mara interviewed dozens of locals. Most refused to talk. The few who did told fragments of a hidden history, an old family rumored to practice strange rituals, a farmhouse that once stood deep in the woods, and a boy who never aged. One old woman spoke the clearest truth. There was a child, she whispered, born wrong, born empty. What happened to him? Mara asked. He was taken away, the woman said, not for punishment, for protection. From what? The woman's eyes filled with tears. From us. Mara eventually found the remains of the old farmhouse, burned down decades ago. Only a stone foundation and a single rusted door frame remained. But beside it, hidden beneath dead branches, she found a staircase leading down into the earth. A second cellar. The air inside was chokingly cold, alive with stale breath and something metallic. This room was different. No jars, no shelves, just drawings covering every inch of the walls, childlike sketches in charcoal and dried blood, faces, eyes, smiling figures, something like a family portrait repeated dozens of times. In each drawing, one figure stood apart, tall, thin, smiling politely. The collector. But the most disturbing drawing was the largest one, a floor-to-ceiling mural. It showed a room with no walls, suspended above a dark, endless forest. In the center stood a huge wooden chair. Above it, in uneven handwriting,
The room above the trees where all my pieces fit. A floorboard creaked behind her. Mara froze. A voice breathed against her ear. You found my favorite room. She spun, gun raised. The flashlight beam landed on a man standing in the doorway, pale, expressionless, eyes too wide, smile too soft. The collector. He tilted his head. I've been waiting for you, Mara. He moved before she fired, a blur of darkness, a rush of wind. His fingers grazed her arm, cold as marble. Mara ran, through the cellar, up the stairs, into the forest. Branches slashed her arms, roots caught her boots. Behind her, the collector moved silently. No footsteps, no breath, just the occasional soft tapping on a tree trunk. Tap, 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 tap. As if tracking her, as if marking the path. She reached the trail, lungs burning, and sprinted toward the road. A car approached, headlights blinding. The sheriff's SUV. Mara waved frantically, but the sheriff wasn't alone. Someone sat in the passenger seat. Tall, thin, smiling. The sheriff stared blankly ahead, eyes empty. The collector leaned out the window slightly and gently tapped the side of the door. Tap, tap. Next time, he whispered. The SUV drove past her, disappearing into the smoke of its own dust. Mara stayed in Stillwater, not because she felt safe, but because the collector had taken something from her. Not a limb, not an eye, not a piece of bone. Something worse. During her escape, he had brushed her wrist, barely a touch, but since that night, every morning, she woke with a new small bruise on her skin, circular, perfectly shaped, like fingertips, like someone testing her, shaping her, preparing her. In the mirror, she now noticed something else. Her smile sometimes curled on its own, too soft, too polite, too much like his. She kept her lights on at night, but at 3:17 every morning, they flickered, and she heard tapping on the window glass. Tap, 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 tap. Always the same pattern, always in threes, and always followed by a whisper. You're almost ready, Mara. Soon, you'll join the room above the trees. She never opened the curtains, because some nights she could see the shadow beneath them. Tall, thin, smiling.